Exclusively on Secular Media Network, this is the Atheist Manifesto.
Hello and welcome to the Atheist Manifesto, your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement. I am your host, Callie Wright, joined by my co-host Ari Stillman. What's up, Ari?
Hi.
Well, you don't have like a kitschy, sarcastic, fun, like...
No, that's what happens when we record at 9 in the morning on a Sunday, is that I don't have time to come up with this kind of thing, Callie.
I'm sorry, Ari. I love you.
It's your fault that this show's going downhill. It's just not the same Atheist Manifesto it used to be.
Back in my day. Well, this week we are going to have a conversation about YouTube atheism with Steve Shives. What's up, Steve?
Yeah.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Callie and Ari. Nice to be here.
So let's talk about YouTube. I feel like YouTube is like there's lots of great content there, but as far as like the quote community, like I feel like it's a cesspool. Am I wrong?
No, you're completely right. I mean, here's the thing, right? There are some fantastic things on YouTube. I mean, YouTube as a whole is not, as bad as its reputation often paints it. But yeah, there are corners. And one of those corners is the atheist community on YouTube, unfortunately, where it's just almost nothing but garbage. It's really depressing.
And obviously, it's the comment section, but some of the content creators too, like, so I bought a camera. I'm thinking about starting to do videos for YouTube and all this sort of stuff. And I was looking around at different, atheist YouTubers, LGBT YouTubers, just to kind of see, what's out there and what's going on. Like if there's a niche that needs to be filled or something like that. And I went to look at some of your videos, which I'm not a huge YouTuber, right? Like I don't spend a lot of time watching videos on YouTube. So I'd seen a few.
Okay, I got it. Enough hours on there to cover both of us by far.
So I went to look at some of your videos, Steve, and so I typed Steve Shives into the comment box, and I don't know if you know this.
That was your first mistake. That was your first mistake.
Can I guess what it auto-completed to?
Go ahead. What do you...
Steve Shives is a regressive cuck.
No, actually, it auto-completed to Steve Shives, and I didn't look at what the other, what the other suggested searches were. But one of the first results is the video title in all caps, "The Beautiful Destruction of Steve Shives."
Yeah, which I believe was posted over a month ago, and I'm still here. So
right.
Not sure. Maybe they should check their facts on that one.
Yeah, and I didn't bother watching the video because I have a feeling I know what's in it.
Yeah.
It's like 475,000 views. And this guy is making just tons of money on Patreon, and I'm just like this. Is that really like in all seriousness? Is that just depressing or discouraging to see that kind of thing?
It can be. Yeah, I mean, it's depressing not because I feel like people like that represent atheists as a whole, because I know from experience there are plenty of people who identify as atheists who also, make an effort to be a decent person and an empathetic person and care about, other people and try to, worry about concerns other than their own. And, but it's depressing that mentality and that approach, that angry, obnoxious, narcissistic approach of, I'm going to pick a fight with somebody, and this isn't about raising awareness or making life better for atheists or pushing back against religious suppression or whatever. This is just about me and me proving that I'm smarter than somebody else or I'm cooler or better than somebody else. It's depressing how popular that is and how profitable it is. Like, there's way more money. If you want to be an atheist and you want to start a YouTube channel, there's way more money in just being a total jerk about feminism and social justice and racial justice and just appealing to the trolls and the angry white cis hetero men than there is doing anything else. And it is, it is depressing, because I know that there's this whole other portion of the atheist community that is just not being served and is not being represented by these people making these YouTube videos. And yeah, as you said, I mean, that one video about me has hundreds of thousands of views, and the most popular, in terms of views and subscribers, the most popular atheist content creators on YouTube, with a few exceptions, are all of that type, are all of that angry, sort of proudly ignorant, casually bigoted type that are giving, the whole community a black eye.
Well, yeah, because I feel like, obviously, I think people in the atheist movement know better. Like, they know that, like, the Amazing Atheist and Sargon of Akkad and, like, all of those guys, that they don't represent us as a movement. But I feel like, I feel like to the outside, to people who aren't involved in the movement, who don't know anything about the movement, they kind of do. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if they were more difficult to find, if they got less attention, I don't think I would ever even mention them. And I don't think most of us probably would have no need to mention them. We would just leave them to their own little bubble of hate in their own little corner. And we would just, hey, you know what? Have a nice life. But the fact that they are so loud, and it is like, if someone is just sort of starting to embrace an identity as an atheist or a non-believer of some kind, and they go on the internet and they're looking for atheist content, unfortunately, it's a lot easier to find content creators like those you mentioned than it is to find, the Seth Andrews or the Matt Dillahunters or the Aaron Ra's. And that, again, it's depressing. It's alarming. And, I don't know. I'm sure you have similar stories where I know people who tell me all the time, I used to watch the Amazing Atheist stuff, or the Amazing Atheist, or Cult of Dusty or somebody, where they were the first atheists that I watched, and then I sort of I outgrew them. I moved away from
that
them.
happened to me.
Yeah, and it's a shame that you have to go through that process. That you can't just start with the good, responsible, socially conscious people who are actually trying to do something that's positive and helpful to people and informative. You have to sort of hack your way through the jungle first. It's too bad.
Yeah. Do you think there's something unique about YouTube that attracts it? Because I'm not aware, and maybe I'm just ignorant, maybe I don't know, but like, I'm not aware of any podcasts or blogs that have huge followings like that come from that perspective. Like that sort of seems unique to YouTube. Do you think that's true? And if it is true, why do you think that is?
Well, I think when YouTube started, and a lot of the bigger atheist YouTubers have been around for a while, and they remember when YouTube had a format that encouraged people to make response videos to each other. On YouTube, you used to be able to actually tag a video that you made as a response video to another video. So that culture of me versus you, of videos, not just, and it grew very easily from I'm going to make a response to somebody else's video to I'm going to attack the person who made this video. I'm going to show why they're wrong about everything and why I'm right about everything and why I'm smarter than they are. So that part of YouTube engagement, I think, is sort of written into the DNA of a lot of these YouTubers, even though YouTube itself has grown past that and doesn't really do that anymore. And I think would probably like it if people just stopped doing that, at least doing it in the really aggressive way. I mean, there's nothing wrong with making a video responding to another video you saw, but when you do it from this position of I'm going to attack this other person, I'm going to make this other person an object of ridicule, and the purpose isn't to share some insight I have or to open some sort of a discussion. It's just to put this other person down. I think that's something that YouTube unfortunately encouraged in its earlier years, and now it's kind of stuck with it. And I think that the reason why it
really deserve it, though.
What if they really deserve it?
Yeah,
like that Steve Shives guy. I heard something.
Jerk. God, I hear he is an SJW mangina. That's the word through the grapevine. I don't know.
That's the rumor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it almost seems like the same impulse that makes reality TV popular. Like people, thriving on conflict and drama while at the same time claiming that they hate drama. Like, does that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, they all. I mean, I heard a couple months ago, and I love this term. I had never heard this term before, but Kat Black coined the term, or I don't know if she coined it or not, but she's the first person I ever heard to say it. Media troll. And a media troll, according to her definition, is someone who basically makes content online to start fights with other people to attract attention, to attract views. And I think that describes, almost all of the popular YouTube atheists. They all behave as media trolls. They're constantly trying to create enemies for themselves that they can then, wage battle against, and their supporters can applaud them, and they can grandstand before their mob of supporters, and they can make the other person, whether it's me or someone with a higher profile than I have, like Anita Sarkeesian or somebody, make them look like the fool, make them look like the wrong person, make them look like the enemy, and lift themselves up. And I think, the reason why that doesn't happen as often in podcasting is because when you make a podcast, you have to actually create content. Like, people don't do podcasts back and forth at each other. You have to actually create original content for an hour or an hour and a half or however long your format is. And you have to come up with something original, or you have to talk to somebody and have a conversation with somebody. You can't just do this, I'll play somebody else's video and I'll stop it every time I have a joke or a quip. And,
God, tell that to the guy who spent a half hour of his show ripping into Noah and Heath and me.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not nearly as common,
right,
in the podcast world as it is in YouTube. And I mean, in YouTube, that is, especially in atheist circles, unfortunately, that is a very firmly established format. There are people whose channels are almost nothing but that,
I mean, it seems to me like a blog would I'm fixated on excuse me, I'm fixated on this idea that this phenomenon seems to exist uniquely there, because I think blogs would lend themselves well to that dynamic, but maybe I'm missing it. Maybe it's because Patheos doesn't really allow that kind of thing, and that's like the major blogging platform that atheists use. I don't know. It's really weird to me.
I don't know. I mean, maybe the audience for that sort of content would rather watch it than read it. I mean, I don't know.
There is some of that on blogs, but I think YouTube is a lot more of a catchier place. It's kind of less effort to watch a YouTube video than it is to read a blog and, go through all the detailed points in a written format. If someone's just on the screen, with their big hand gestures and their cool graphics and stuff, just telling it to you, it's a lot less effort and probably more entertaining as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of it is presentation. And I mean, the dirty little secret is that almost anybody who does a YouTube video, myself included, there's always an element of performance, no matter how sincere you are, no matter how earnest you are in expressing your thoughts and your feelings. If you're good at it, there's always an element of performance. You're always making sure to keep in mind, what's this look like in the camera? And so, yeah, when you do that, and if you're good at it, it gives you an extra layer of presentation and an extra layer of you can add an extra power and an extra form of persuasion to your message than if you were a blogger. And the other thing is, at least in my opinion, and opinions vary, but most of the people we're talking about, these toxic YouTubers, they're not great writers. So if they were forced to put their message across purely through the written word, I think most of them would fail, because I just looking at their content, they're not good writers. They get through on force of personality.
Right on. And so let's talk about your channel for a second. If I go to the Steve Shives YouTube channel, what am I going to find?
Well, my channel is dying, Callie, so you better hurry up and watch it. Actually, it's very eclectic. I do a video every day, Monday through Friday. And the only regular series that I do at this point that is atheist related is I do a series called An Atheist Reads, where I critique atheist apologetics books. And I do that for about half the year. And then I do 3 books usually. This year I did 4 books because I added a shorter book. But after that, I take the rest of the year off from doing that. And then on that day, which is Thursday in my upload schedule, I do videos called Steve and Stuffy that are me and stuffed animals doing like funny stuff. And those are my favorite videos. And if those videos ever go viral, that's all I'm going to do. So just heads up to anybody who enjoys my content. If Steve and Stuffy videos start getting like hundreds of thousands of views, that's all I'm doing. But and I also do a series called The Facepalm 5 that is like a review of events in the news. I do a series called 5 Things where I take a look at particular topics and look at. I used to do a series called 5 Stupid Things, but I changed it to 5 Things, and the adjective is different for every video. And sometimes it's like a positive look at something, sometimes it's a negative look at something, a more critical look. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, the one about reptilians, I really enjoyed.
I'm glad people seem to like that one, because I really had a fun time writing that one and doing that one.
So talk to me about your process. I mean, you're uploading every day. That's in my mind, and maybe it's just because I'm not like a super experienced video producer or whatever. I mean, producing a podcast, I mean, I spend probably 5 to 10 hours specifically on the podcast every week. Mm-hmm. And I think for people who don't do audio editing or recording or anything like that, that may seem daunting, but to me, it's just, I mean, I've been doing it for like 10 years now. But to me, when you say I'm producing a video every day, like that sounds grueling.
Well, it helps a lot to have a schedule, and it helps to know that I'm not in front of the camera shooting stuff every day. And I'm not even editing video every day. The way my schedule works is my actual video production days are usually Monday and Tuesday and Friday. Sometimes Wednesday, it depends. And then the other days are spent editing and writing. And I usually shoot a day ahead. So like the video I'm shooting today will go up tomorrow, et cetera, et cetera. But for the 5 Things videos, I actually shoot those a couple weeks in advance. So like yesterday I just shot the next batch of 5 Things videos, and I'm editing those. I was editing those yesterday, and I'm going to finish those today. But they won't actually go up on my channel until about a month from now, because I have it backloaded so far. But yeah, it helps to shoot ahead and to work ahead, and it helps to have days where you're not gonna be in front of the camera doing stuff. You're gonna be doing other stuff. And actually some of the most grueling days, every other Thursday is a really heavy writing day for me, because that's when I write the Facepalm 5 video for the following week, and the next 2 5 Things videos. So it's basically all day just spent writing. And that's actually more grueling than, the next day when I'm in front of the camera actually shooting those videos. So it helps to vary it up so that you're not doing like the exact same thing every single day.
Gotcha. And is there a reason in particular that video is your chosen medium?
I just kind of backed into it. I mean, I made my first YouTube video that, ironically, considering what I said earlier about response videos, it was actually a response video to someone who posted questions about like 5 questions for atheists, right? But it wasn't like an adversarial thing. It was more like a curiosity thing. Like, here are 5 questions I would like to hear what atheists think about things. And
so it wasn't one of those stupid like gotcha atheist checkmate. Yeah. Like it wasn't one of those things.
Yeah, no, and that's what appealed to me about it. I was like, hey, this guy actually seems like he might be interested in what people have to say. So I made a video in response to it, and I really liked it. Like, I liked the experience. I liked the process. And I just sort of started doing it. And the more I did it, and the more comfortable I got with it, the more frequently I did it, and like 6 years later, here I am. So yeah, I mean, before that I was doing a blog. I wrote a blog, and I would write a blog article every day. And I started doing that as a way to get myself to write. And now, I do the YouTube thing every day. And it's just, it was never something that I planned. It's just something that just sort of happened.
The staff of Secular Coalition for America lobbies U.S. Congress on issues of separation of church and state, and they've become a powerhouse for change in the United States government. You'll definitely want to subscribe to receive their email action alerts. These are updates for important issues and ones that you can get involved with directly. And hopefully, you'll consider making a contribution to the Secular Coalition for America to help them continue fighting for your equality. You can do it all at secular.org/give. saskatchewan.org.
Do you know where Saskatchewan is? Probably not. It's in Canada. If you do, you might know a city named Regina. In Regina, there's a studio. And in that studio, there are, at least once a month, a bunch of skeptical atheist geeks and goofballs who get together to do a podcast. We are the Brainstorm crew, and we're trying to help spread a bit of reason and critical thinking while still having fun. Never taking things too seriously, but still not accepting everything we're told. We go through different topics, exploring them in depth, and often disagreeing. We try to stick to provable facts, and we never trust in myth. That's why we say we're woo-free since 2013. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spreaker under Brainstorm, or check out our website, brainstormblog.net. I can't promise you'll always agree with us, but I can promise you'll have fun listening to us.
You talk a lot about social justice in your videos, and did you have sort of the same trajectory, but in the opposite direction as some of the other YouTube atheists? Where like you talk about atheism almost exclusively, and then you sort of like saunter your way into social justice, and then was it that kind of trajectory, or has that always been there?
It was that kind of trajectory in terms of my content. Yeah, I mean, it's always been there for me. I don't know if I should say always, like I wasn't born, like an SJW. I mean, I'm
pretty sure it's genetic. I don't know.
It's like some kind of viral phage. It infects you at an early age. But no, because I grew up in an area, and I still live in an area in Western Maryland that is very conservative and is sort of saturated with a lot of casual racism and sexism. So, I had certain unhealthy attitudes sort of imprinted on me as a kid that I still occasionally try to transcend and control. But for the most part, as a person, at least since I've been an adult, I've always thought that it was important to stand up for people who were less fortunate than you, or who had a harder road to walk in life than you did. And the reason that I started talking about things like that in my YouTube stuff, particularly in terms of feminism, is that there were so many other atheists who were attacking it and who were demonizing it and vilifying it. And I thought, wait a minute. And the first thing I wanted to do is to make sure that everybody thought that I wasn't one of them. I mean, it was kind of selfish. Right. It was like, hey, wait a minute. Whoa, because I've had that experience too. I've had that experience in real life where, someone like if it's two guys standing around, it's me and some other guy, and like an attractive woman will walk by, and he'll kind of look at her as she walks by, and then look at me like, huh? And I was like, oh no, like I'm not on your team. Like I don't want to be like the guy who stands on the corner and leers at women, and I don't want you to think that I'm that guy either. And so part of it was that. It was just, okay, let me draw a line here and say, okay, I'm not one of the atheists who dogs feminism. I'm going to be supportive of feminism. And then the more I did it, the more important I thought it was, because that became like a huge sort of source of content for those toxic people. With some of them, for a while, it seemed like they were making way more videos about how cancerous feminism is than they were talking about religion and atheism. And I just thought, this can't be who we are. This can't be the face that we're showing the world as atheists, if we expect things to get any better for us as a group. So, a lot of it was that, in terms of how I started talking about it more in my content. But for me as a person, it's been important to me for a very long time.
And so growing up in a conservative area, I mean, how does a white cishet dude bro get there? I tell you what, I credit a lot of it to my grandmother. My grandmother on my father's side, is such an amazing role model. And I mean, she's not perfect. Occasionally she's an 80-something-year-old white lady from, I go, oh, Granny. But for the most part, she helped me when I was growing up to learn to care about other people, to look at what other people are going through. And I wouldn't say it at this point because I'm an atheist, but, she would say, just always think there, but for the grace of God go I.
Imagine that the person in that more difficult situation than you isn't any worse of a person than you. They just happen to have a harder time than you because of circumstances out of their control. And, I always had that idea planted in my head. And I also always had another idea planted in my head from my father, who always said, just be who you are. Just do what you think is right and say what you think you need to say and don't worry what other people think. So I guess I kind of combine those two. And I can't say I've always done it in real life. Some of my most shameful experiences are times in real life where I thought I should have spoken up about something and I didn't. But fortunately, on YouTube, it's super easy to do it.
Right.
So I do it as often as I can.
And I mean, does it ever become personal for you when people attack you like that? Because I feel like for me, those things kind of roll off my back to some degree. Like, I have a few YouTube videos that I've put up, not like that I was like, oh, I'm going to produce a video and put it up on YouTube. But one is a video of me giving a speech at the Transgender Day of Remembrance. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple other ones. And some of them got some pretty terrible comments, about wishing that my mom would have aborted me, or that I should commit suicide, and using the F word and
charming.
And it was a really odd thing when I read it, because there's part of me that is bothered by that, but there's part of me that's like, well, this is just some random asshole on the internet. Why should I care? So I feel like in some ways it's really hard to not take it personally, but you also recognize this is almost victim blaming, and I'm not sure exactly where this dynamic lies, but I also feel like I put myself on that platform knowing that I'm putting myself in front of those people, so I kind of have to expect it. It doesn't make it okay, but right. I have to know that it's coming. So are you immune to it at this point because it happens so much? Or?
Well, yeah, that's another thing. It's happened to me a few times now where people on YouTube with much larger audiences than me will make videos about what a horrible person I am, and I'll get just flooded with abuse and harassment and hatred. So by the third or fourth time that happens, it kind of doesn't really bother you. You're just like, oh, it's more of this. Okay, whatever. I've always been relatively thick-skinned, it doesn't bother me, and I don't spend time thinking about it when I'm not in front of it. If I'm moderating my comments, or I'm getting a bunch of notifications on Twitter and I'm having to block people or mute people or whatever, then it's obviously on my mind, and it's like, oh, this again. But when I'm done, I get up from the computer and I go watch TV or hang out with my wife or pet my cat, and it's like, it doesn't follow me around. And I take it personally when people attack my wife, because people have attacked my wife and said really awful things about her, and said things about our marriage that they have no right to say, and they have no idea what they're talking about. And that bothers me.
Well, yeah, because you put yourself into this fight. Your wife didn't sign up for that.
No. Well, and the thing is, she has appeared in a couple of videos of mine that that I now have on private, because they attracted so much abuse, which is unfortunate, because I really like those videos, because my wife is awesome, and I think it's great when we hang out together on camera, and but yeah, she's not a YouTuber. She's doing her own thing, and for her to attract that level of just hostility and abuse over absolutely nothing, is upsetting, But other than that, it doesn't bother me personally. It doesn't follow me around away from the computer. But at the same time, I know that it does really seriously affect other people who experience it. There are people who have gotten way worse than I have for doing way less. Right. And, some people, and many people have decided to scale back their online activities, or to say, I'm not going to be on Twitter anymore because of this, or I'm not going to be on YouTube anymore because of this, or I'm not going to be a writer anymore because of this. And that's just awful. And there's no excuse for that. And of course, you need to know it's coming. You need to have somewhat of a thick skin when you decide to do this sort of thing, because just the way things are, and there's a certain environment that you're going to be putting yourself into. But yeah, at the same time, you can't treat that level of toxicity as though it's some kind of a natural state, as though, well, that's just the internet, you know?
Right.
No, that's not just the internet. That's the internet because that's the way we've allowed it to be. You don't have to just accept, well, you know, if you express a certain opinion about video games or about feminism or about the new Ghostbusters movie or whatever, that you just have to accept that people are going to call you all these awful, racist, sexist things. Yeah, that's just the way it is. No, it's not just the way it is. It's not a natural state. It's people's behavior, and we can do something to change it. So that motivates me a lot more than my own personal feelings, because even though I think the abuse that I have received is unwarranted, I mean, it's not like it's ruining my day or anything, right. But it does ruin other people's days. So it's something that definitely needs attention.
Yeah, well, and I feel the same way about Celeste too, because I worry, as the podcast gets more out there, as the blog gets more out there, as I start doing YouTube videos, that's the kind of thing that I worry about, because she's not an extrovert like I am. I'm like the textbook definition of extrovert, and I always worry like even like hey, we're going to conventions and we're going to be in this room full of 500 people packed wall to wall, and I'm like, I know that's an uncomfortable situation for her, and I feel bad for putting her into that situation because she didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
So I can sympathize there. So I'm curious, when we're talking about this dynamic where people attacking each other and that helps build their audience, does that only work one way? Like when that sort of thing happens, do you get subscribers and views out of it?
I get views. I don't notice getting subscribers from it, but I get views. So in that sense, hey, thanks. right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And I mean, obviously, a really big uptick in comments, in negative comments, trash comments that I end up just removing anyway.
Free speech.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I know. It's all. I'm prohibiting their free speech by using the functionality that YouTube gives me to control my own channel.
Yeah, it's just that whole mindset is so boggling to me. It's like it's almost the same thing as like, hey, I want to come into your house in your living room and tell you what a piece of shit you are, and if you don't let me, you're limiting my free speech. Like, that's what that sounds like to me.
Well, that's it. That's it exactly. If you perform that thought experiment and you transfer it from an online environment to a real world environment, there's no way anyone would ever be expected to put up with it. There's no way that, and not only if somebody was standing right outside your house and was screaming insults at you all day, and you called the cops and said, hey, get rid of this guy. This guy has been standing out here screaming abuse at me outside my house all day. And then people blamed you for calling the cops. It's like, no, wait a minute. He
just
has
want
no
to live
right
in
to
your
do
little
that.
safe space, your echo chamber that is your house.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. I mean, the whole mindset, it's this entitlement mindset that a lot of these folks have, where they feel like not only should they be entitled to say whatever they want, but they should be allowed to say whatever they want to whoever they want in whatever environment they choose, even if it's in an environment that you control and that you, for whatever reason, don't want them to be in. It's like it's this narcissistic mindset where their rights and their desires should overwrite everybody else's. And if they think that they have something important to say, you should sit there and listen to them no matter what, whether you asked them for their opinion or you expressed any interest or it's even remotely related to anything you're doing.
Which is questionable on YouTube sometimes.
It's the sort of thing that just, it would never fly in real life. If you walked into somebody else's restaurant and started harassing the other patrons, you would be kicked out and nobody would question it, because we understand you can't allow people to go into someone else's place and start ruining things for everybody else. That's just not allowed. That's not okay. But
America.
Yeah, exactly. What happened to this country? Did we lose a war? Come on.
So one of the big news things surrounding YouTube lately is that they seem to be taking monetization options away from YouTubers. And for people who don't understand what that means, basically YouTube does ad revenue sharing with content creators who get, a certain level of views, and YouTube will pay a share of ad revenue to people who make these videos based on how many views they have. And recently, if I understand it correctly, they've kind of tightened their standards on what kinds of videos can be monetized. Is that accurate?
Yeah, well, what they've done is, actually, I don't think the policy has changed all that much. But what they've started doing is notifying people if a video has been demonetized or rejected for being monetized. And they're doing it because they've identified certain types of content that they feel are unattractive to advertisers. And so they're not going to be trying to sell ads on these videos because they figure advertisers aren't going to pay for them anyway. So it's not actually as radical a change as some people are making it out to be. And, speaking of the entitlement mentality, like the fit that is being thrown by some people on YouTube over this, it sort of speaks to that. The idea that, well, wait a minute, I made the video and I should be allowed to make money on it, not realizing that that's entirely up to YouTube. YouTube hosts your video for free. YouTube allows you to send your video, to spread your content to an audience of potentially millions of people for free. You don't have to pay YouTube anything. And if YouTube decides, for whatever reason, that it's not going to put ads on your video, that's up to YouTube. Like, that's not up to you. That's never been up to you. You've never had that right. But, certain folks think that they do have that right, or that they should have that right. And it's been somewhat entertaining to watch, I have to be honest, because it hasn't affected me. I have not gotten any notices that any of my videos have been demonetized under this new policy. But if I do at some point, that's fine. That's part of the deal. I serve at the pleasure of YouTube. If YouTube ever decides that they don't want my content anymore, there's really not a whole lot I can do about it, because it's always been up to them.
Right? Yeah. I think. In reading the policy, it seems like they can basically look at almost at any video that's not like a funny cat video and say, yeah, you know what? Because it talks about controversial content.
Yeah.
And I mean, that can be almost anything. So, I don't necessarily disagree with, obviously it's their platform to do with what they want. I think I might argue that with a platform that big, it becomes maybe sort of a social responsibility, as opposed to just being like, my platform, F you, I'm going to do what I want with it. Yeah. But and that's a discussion that can be had. But I think mainly my issue is that it seems like, okay, you're going to give me these guidelines on how to use your platform. Fine, it's your platform. But you got to be specific. You got to tell me what I can and can't do here. And, sure. and if I'm thinking I obviously have no prospects of making money on YouTube anytime soon, but if I'm going to be making videos about trans stuff, and say one of those videos goes viral and I get millions and millions of views, they could just decide to not monetize that because someone decides it's controversial, and that just that doesn't sit right with me.
Well, and you're absolutely right about that part. And one of the problems that YouTube has always had, and I think pretty much anybody who's ever been a YouTube content creator for any significant period of time can probably relate to this, is that YouTube has a real problem with transparency regarding its monetization practices. It's really difficult to figure out, okay, well, if you might have two videos that have equal amounts of views, but one video makes 10 times more in ad revenue than the other. And you're like, why? What's the difference? Why did this video make this much money and this video, which got the exact same amount of attention, only made this much money? And it's really difficult to get those kind of details out of YouTube. And for the community guidelines, not just the demonetization practices, but this community guidelines in general, there's a lot of really inconsistent application of those guidelines. And there are videos that are up getting hundreds of thousands, millions of views that would seem to be blatantly in violation of certain YouTube rules that are just allowed to stay. And then there are others that are taken down immediately. And that's always been a problem with YouTube. It's the consistency of the enforcement of its rules and the transparency of how it makes its decisions. And I mean, maybe if one of the upsides of this, if one of the benefits of people throwing a tantrum over the new monetization policy is that they become more transparent about, what they expect and what qualifies as a monetizable video and what doesn't, then that's great. Because that's always been an issue. Yeah,
I just feel like if that was, because I mean, there are people who make their living that way. Sure. And like, I'd be terrified.
Yeah. Well, my YouTube channel, I make most of my money from my Patreon campaign, but I get ad revenue as well. So, and I make my living off my YouTube channel. My ad revenue is not the primary source, but still, it's a piece. You know what I mean? Like it's something that I wouldn't want to do without.
What's something I could do with a very sexy lady friend of mine that people would find provocative, interesting, and entertaining enough to tune in week after week? Oh, I know! A podcast! If you'd like to hear me and Kate be provocative and thought-provoking week after week, join us on the Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast. We'd love for you to be part of our audiological three-way.
I'm Daniel Radcliffe, and I believe that reaching out for help is the bravest thing a person can do. If you are struggling and need support, call the Trevor Lifeline at 1-866-488-7386. It's free and confidential, and trained counselors are there to listen 24/7 without judgment. To learn more about the Trevor Project's life-saving work for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or questioning young people, go to thetrevorproject.org.
Before we jump back into the show, it's time to thank our patrons. Big shout out this week to Kimberly. Thank you so much for contributing to the show financially and for believing in us enough to support our mission to smuggle penises into women's restrooms and to force every American into their very own mandatory gay marriage. To find out more, head over to patreon.com/The Manifesto. Thank you. Let's talk for a second about allyship.
Okay.
Because
yes.
Because I feel like I don't know. I just want to hear your treatise on allyship. Let's just do that.
Yes, tell us how to ally good.
Yeah. But I don't think it's my job to tell people how to ally good. I think you have to listen to the people to whom you want to be an ally. I think that's the most important thing, is to listen to people and to listen to what they're saying about themselves and about their needs, and also listen to what they say about you. If you're doing something wrong or something that makes people uncomfortable or something that is counterproductive, like I think that's the most important thing to me. That's been the most useful thing to me as I've tried to be an ally to various people who are in groups that I don't belong to, is to just listen to what people are saying and know when to speak and when to shut up. And if you're an ally, most of the time the answer is shut up. Shut up and listen,
So I'm curious about your thoughts on the idea that, because there are so many people, it's really easy to sort of paint people on the other sides of issues as sort of monolithically bad or monolithically evil. And obviously in our rational brains, we all know that that's not the case, right? We know that not every Trump supporter is actually a raging sexist and racist,
Right.
They may be willing to abide those things in favor of the fact that they think he's going to help them, economically, which is still not okay. But I think we do ourselves and the discourse a disservice to just outright dismiss people like that. And I'm curious, just your thoughts on that dynamic, how people who are, otherwise, on one side, super caring, super loving, super kind people, but can sort of abide and even participate in really awful things like that? That's something that's kind of a perpetual question for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's important to recognize that is what's happening. You know, like it's always very difficult to humanize people who are doing bad things, because it's easier to not do that. It's easier to just say, oh, you like with the example of Trump voters, like, oh, the Trump voters, they're the ones that are ruining this country, and you know they have to be defeated, and we just sort of paint them with this single color and say, oh, okay, those are the bad guys, and us over here who are voting for someone else, we're the good guys. It's just easier to do that. It's much more difficult to humanize them and to view them as three-dimensional people. And it gets even worse when you're talking about people who are advocating, not just for a toxic political candidate, but are, more blatantly harmful or destructive. I mean, people who are pushing out and out racism or misogyny or homophobia or transphobia or whatever. It's difficult to reconcile the fact that, you can be a person who is a good parent, or a caring friend, and also support these absolutely monstrous ideologies. I mean, that's really difficult for us to figure out, to reconcile in our brain. Like, how can a good person do this? Are they a good person if they support this sort of thing? I mean, yeah, it's a challenge for me too, honestly. And I appreciate that there are people who are not me, who have more energy for that kind of engagement, because I can talk to you about it and say it's really important to humanize our adversaries, and to remember that, just because somebody posts awful, terrible stuff on an MRA subreddit, that doesn't mean that they're pure evil. That doesn't mean that they're, someone who needs to be shunned from society. Like I can agree with that and support that. But at the same time, like, I know that I'm not the person to reach out to that person, like maybe at one point I was a few years ago, before I experienced a lot more of the toxic side of the internet. I think I was more ready to do that. I was more open to let's just reach out to people. Let's have conversations. Let's try to understand where they're coming from. I'm still like that with a lot of people from a lot of viewpoints, but there are certain things that if I hear a certain things come out of somebody's mouth, I just say, okay, somebody else can deal with you. Like, right. That's not for me. I'm glad that there are other people who will deal with them. Like, I don't think they should just be cut off, but I recognize it myself. Like, okay, I'm not doing that,
Yeah, I've had that conversation with a few different people, and it's hard because, every person that I have that conversation with, it's likely to be a new conversation for them. It's not a new conversation for me. The 100th time I have to explain to somebody why tranny is a slur that you shouldn't use if you're not going to use the N-word for black people. Like, the first couple of conversations I had about that, I'm like, okay, well, like, you're probably just, innocently ignorant. And I don't mean ignorant as an insult. I mean, like, you just don't know, and that's okay. Yeah. So, like, I'm going to have a polite conversation and talk, that's the word of choice for people who perpetrate violence against us. And, when I hear someone use that word, my first thought is, like, I'm about to have the crap beat out of me, or I'm about to be killed. So, like, that's why this isn't okay. And, people would come back with counter arguments, and it would end up being a really great discussion. The 100th time that happens, I just want to be like, I don't care what your opinion is. Like, you ask me a question and here's the answer. I'm done with it. Like I'm not in the mood to be charitable the 100th time that someone says that me using the women's restroom is going to make their kids vulnerable to being sexually abused. The first couple of times I have that conversation, I might be able to calm down for a second and be like, well, no, that's irrational. It's not supported by the evidence. It's blah, blah, blah. But like the 100th time, I'm just like, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
I think in those kind of situations, it's really important to figure out what place this person is coming from, because there are lots of people out there who don't realize that what they're saying is a problem, or the way that they're acting is a problem. They're just ignorant. They've never been educated in this sort of issue. So it's not that they're trying to be harmful or hurtful. They just don't know about it. And in that case, you can have an open conversation with them and hopefully correct them on some things. But there are other people, and I don't know the exact statistical breakdown on this, but I would hope that they would be a minority of people who are just being, toxic people, and they don't care and they don't want to learn anything new. They just want to prove that they're right and that everyone else is wrong, and they're not open to looking at evidence. And those are the kind of people where I think that response would be a lot more warranted. Just be like, I don't need to have this conversation with you because it's not going to be productive for anyone.
Yeah. And I think it like I always tell people, because people will occasionally ask me, because one of my videos that I do every week is a Q&A video, and occasionally people ask me like, I'm an atheist and I have so-and-so is a Christian, and, how can I talk to them? How can I argue with them about, who's right and who's wrong? And my advice to people for years has been just ask them questions. Just ask them why they think what they think, why they feel what they feel. And don't do it in an accusatory way. And don't do it in, you're trying to catch them or you're trying to persuade them. Just do it out of simple curiosity. I want to understand why you think the way you do, why you feel the way you do. And I think that method is applicable not just to atheist religion questions, but if somebody's saying something really, really hurtful about, trans people or people of a certain race or people of a certain religion, why do you say this? Why do you think this? What led you to this conclusion that these people are bad? And just try to
watch them implode.
Yeah, and then you've got them.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think I don't think it works every single time, but I do think it's a much better method if you have the stomach for it, if you have the patience to do it, than just trying to constantly grapple with the other person. Trying to say, okay, well, here's why that's wrong, and here's why that's wrong, and here's why that's wrong. You ask them questions, you get them to tell you about themselves and about where they come from and why they feel this, and you can go from there. And I think that can be helpful in helping you understand them and maybe breaking down some of those barriers. So maybe they could maybe it would lead them to be more understanding of you. But like I say, for certain people or for certain attitudes, I just don't have the patience for that. I mean, if somebody starts a conversation with me on Twitter, like I've never heard from them before, and their first line is, "I disagree with you about feminism," goodbye. Right. That's not the way you want to start a conversation with me at this point, because I've heard that 10,000 times and I'm just not interested. Especially me as a guy talking probably to another guy. I am not interested in being your feminism 101 instructor. Like if you seriously were interested in it, you can go do the homework yourself. Like I'm not going to do that for you. But I'm glad that there are other people who are willing to do that,
That's the thing, though, is that when things like that happen, I think a lot of people would be willing to, accuse you of, you're a public figure and you do this for a living, so you should be willing to talk to anybody about these topics. And if you're not, then you're just putting yourself in your little echo chamber. But, my view on that is you're still a human being and you have the right to engage or not engage in any conversation that you see fit. You still, just because you're a public figure doesn't mean that you give up your boundaries on everything.
No, yeah. Since when do public figures have to answer every letter that they receive? They
do, or else they're bad and mean, and nobody returned my email that was very important.
Exactly. Or I was totally polite.
Yeah, I was totally polite when I called him a dickhead.
Yeah, he's like, my favorite. I'll tell you, my favorite is when they approach me with something that they consider polite, but that I just consider tedious. So I end up blocking them. And then sometimes someone else will inform me later after I block them. After you block that person, they tweeted at so-and-so and they talked about what a dick you are. Like, okay, so I was right to block them then. Awesome. Glad to know.
All right. Well, Steve, this has been a whole lot of fun. I definitely appreciate you taking the time. Why don't you take a minute, just tell us where we can find all your stuff.
Plugs.
Well, you can find me on YouTube. You can just go to youtube.com/Steve Shives, and you can see all of my videos that I have done about all of the things we've talked about today. I am a co-host on an awesome podcast called Late Seating, which is a movie review podcast that I do with my friend Jason Harding. And you can listen to that at lemmylistenpodcasts.com. And that would be awesome too. But those are the places where you can seek me out should you choose to do so.
Very cool. Well, thanks a lot for your time. We appreciate it, my friend.
Absolutely. Anytime. It was a joy.
It
was a joy.
Oh, thanks. That, my friends, is going to do it for this episode of the Atheist Manifesto on Secular Media Network. Definitely want to thank Steve again for his time, for his insight, and for his work. You can find the show on Facebook at facebook.com/theatheistmanifesto. You can email us at theatheistmanifesto@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at GatheistCali. You can find the show on Twitter at TheGatheist. And Ari, your intro sucked. Your outro better be amazing.
It's going to be awesome because it's a unique one. So we've been talking about YouTube, right? And what is something that YouTube channels do a lot? Giveaways. So let's do a giveaway, okay? So I'm going to give you a trivia question about me. And let's see, this episode is going up on the 8th. So I will accept responses up until the 15th, and then I'm going to give you a trivia question. You can email your response to aristillman4@gmail.com or contact me on Facebook, Ari Stillman, and I will randomly select someone who gets the correct answer, and the outro on the 29th will be extolling you and all of your smartness and your glory, and if you want to plug something, I will plug the hell out of it for you. So here is your trivia question. Which Pokemon character did I have a crush on as a kid? It's multiple choice, so don't worry. I'm going to narrow it down for you. Was it A, Misty, B, Ash, C, Jessie, D, James, or E, Squirtle?
I hope it's Squirtle. Don't give it away, but I hope it's Squirtle.
Email me or Facebook me your response, and out of the people who get it correct, I will randomly select a winner to be the lovely recipient of the outro on the 29th. And if you want to hear more trivia about me, you can listen to my terrible spin-off show with Jeremiah called the SJW Circle Jerk, which is on iTunes and Spreaker. And don't listen to it because it's terrible, but it's also great if you want some really useless RE trivia. But the answer to this question is not going to be on there. This is totally random.
All right, friends, email or Facebook your responses if you want the outro to be about you.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to support the show and the activism we do, you can head to patreon.com/theatheistmanifesto and make a per-episode donation as little as $1 per episode. You can also head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. That helps us get heard by lots more people. Before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one cares and no one understands, you need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, knows that you're capable of amazing things and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is the Atheist Manifesto.